Thank you all for joining us. 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller with you. So great to be with you today. Got a lot to talk about. News you're not going to hear anywhere else. We like to consider ourselves the Treasure Valley equivalent of the antidote to fake news. Joining us now from our East Coast affiliate in North Carolina, William Geen of AlleyPack. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Kevin.
Well, do you agree with what the president's doing now on the border?
Well, are you talking about the child separation of illegal immigrant families?
Yes.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
People are going after him all the time, saying this is horrible, he's inhumane, he's cruel. What's the other side of the story?
Well, the other side of the story is if you don't want to be separated from your kids, don't try to break into the United States as illegal aliens. That's the point to it. I posted that in a meme last night on Facebook. And to bed last night, it was already spun up to 25,000 people. The other thing about it is, here in the United States, anybody that's committing a crime that goes into the court system, you don't get to take your kids into jail, and you don't get to take your children into adult prison population or detention populations where those children are more at risk. Also, if you looked at the InfoWars report on Drudge Report yesterday, the head of ICE is pointing out that there's two real important things. One, a lot of the child detention facilities for the illegal immigrants pool tables and PlayStations and medical staff and everything. So it's pretty ritzy detention there paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. And the chair of the Department of the director of DHS, Nielsen, she pointed out that the majority of illegal immigrant kids they're putting into detention aren't coming with their families. These people are sending their children into the United States illegally, and they're doing that because they know that the people in the United States are less likely to stop or return the children, and they want to pump as many people into the United States as possible to take over this country as part of a larger, global socialist kind of plan kind of thing. So they're sending the kids forward. So it's mostly kids that are unaccompanied. When they do go into detention, they've got PlayStations, medical care, free taxpayer food, and pool tables. And if you don't want to be separated from your children, then don't try to break into the United States illegally.
William Geen joining us, AlleyPack, Kevin Miller here at KIDO Talk Radio. And yet, we don't hear that. We have Chuck Todd. We have, you remember her from MTV. Now, all of a sudden, she's a big, highfalutin person on the Fox Business Channel. She's supposedly a smart talking head. Kennedy going after Congressman Chavez yesterday, talking about these kids with the strapped-on bombs and everything else, these, quote, mini rapists and such. And you think to yourself, how naive are we to think that human trafficking doesn't only happen at the border, but happens in, whether it's in your state, North Carolina, or here in the gem state, Idaho?
Well, it's happening to every state right now, and that type of thing to stop. And one of the things that needs to be used today is that there are two amnesty bills on deck that are heading for votes on Thursday. The Good Lot Dream Act Amnesty Bill, H.R. 4760, and then the Compromise Bill, which has come out of the discharge petition. A small group of about 50 or less Republicans have joined with Democrats to try to push amnesty through. They have the votes lined up once again. We're hoping to stop them once again because, we've been able to get enough people calling Washington, D.C. and raising an uproar to be able to stop these amnesty bills in the past. But if those amnesty bills pass, either one of them goes to Trump's desk and gets signed into law, even if it's the one that promises you a wall on the border and increased enforcement and all this other stuff, it's the end of the war. The war against illegal immigration that's been brought to the United States is over, except for the crying and the tens of thousands of victims that occur every year from illegal immigration will turn into several million American citizens. But, because there's just no wall and there's no additional border patrol agents or reduction in legal immigration or chain migration or anything like that, nothing's going to stop the billions that want to come here if the United States Congress continues to signal or makes it official that if you come to the United States illegally, you can stay. And that is the message that they're sending right now. That's the message that will be irrefutable if it's ever signed into law. And the resulting pile-on to this country is probably going to be something more similar to what happened to Rome at the end.
Our great friend William Gain joining us from AlleyPack. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And yet you have the press, aided by Chuck Todd and the libs, airing the kids crying and everything else. When it's very simple, as you've said, if you don't want to break the law, if you don't want your kid taken away, don't commit the crime. And this is all an elaborate plot, is it not, to pressure the squishy congressional folks to finally give us the official open border policy that the chambers of Congress and La Raza claim.
It is, and they'll go and put cameras on illegal immigrant kids brought here by their parents. But they refuse to report on, and they block and they censor on a regular basis all the American kids that are molested, killed, maimed by illegal immigrant truck drivers, shot by the gangs, abducted by the child traffickers. Little boy, terrible story. Used to have a big video up on YouTube before Google hacked it down. Having ice cream with his dad in an ice cream store, and a driving illegal immigrant, plowed into the ice cream store in a truck, drunk as a skunk, shouldn't have been in the country in the first place, been deported over our, in and out of the country, in and out of jails over and over again. Clearly, the child was died in his father's arms. You couldn't get him, besides the local report, besides the local affiliate that did that story, CBS, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, they all refused to do it. The only reason we even know about Kate Steinle dying on that pier in San Francisco was that she got shot right in the middle of the piling the Trump campaign because he said that a bunch of illegal immigrants were not the best people in the world. And Kate Steinle was killed by the illegal immigrant in San Francisco right in the middle of that national pile-on of Trump. So you have to hear about Kate Steinle. Well, there are Americans today, all across this country, just like Kate Steinle, going to be killed or injured by illegal immigrants, and you won't hear a peep about it. You could have a press release in your hand, because we've done this. We've done this in AlleyPack many, many times. A press release in your hand that says, two small American children were killed today when a drunk driving illegal immigrant plowed into an intersection and plowed into the vehicle their mother was driving and killed them both. And it turns out that this illegal immigrant had no respect for our laws whatsoever, including DWI laws, because this illegal immigrant had been shown again and again by the United States government that he could break our laws without any type of penalty whatsoever before escalating to the death of these two children. Here's a picture of little Johnny and his brother Davy, and they'll never go to kindergarten again because their government has failed to protect our citizens from people that would come here and harm us. They'll never print it. You'll never see it. You'll never see it. They willingly, intentionally, and systematically conceal the mass atrocities being committed against United States citizens by illegal immigrants. But if something happens to an illegal immigrant child, we're going to go take that and run the cycle. Right now, all across America, there are people who are like, oh, I don't want to put little kids in cages and it's a border. They don't realize how they're being manipulated. They do not realize that these corporations are working to push their buttons and play one side of the story. What it means is if you're an American citizen out there walking around, it means that if your kid or your grandkid gets killed by an illegal immigrant, they're not as important as an illegal alien is. They're not a priority. And you could count on all of these same news companies that if you pick up a newspaper or turn on the TV and you're looking at an illegal immigrant sob story, pulling on your strings to try to get you to support amnesty legislation or whatever, the same publication would treat your family as persona non grata, and if something bad happened to you, they wouldn't tell anybody if it didn't suit their agenda.
William Gain, if people want to join the fight to save America, what can they do?
We really need some new folks to come in and help us, especially this week with all the calls we need to make to Washington, D.C. to try to stop these amnesty bills. We're going to vote on the amnesty bills on Thursday, we believe, and we're trying to stop them from pushing the country beyond the point of no return. We need you on our free email alerts where we never share your information with others at alleypack.us. That's www.alleypac.us. Alleypack.us. Please join our email alerts. We'll be sending out an alert here, a new press release the next couple of hours. with information and details about these amnesty bills.
William Geen, keep up the good fight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kevin.
William Geen, our old friend from the old country. Let's go to Cindy in Caldwell at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Cindy.
Hey, Kevin. Good morning to you. Thank you ever so much for, it would seem to me, being on the side of William, who just spoke, to save this nation as a republic. You know, I mean, he's exactly right. One, I already had by, I don't know who it was, Juan Perez, whatever have you, the owner of the car. I'm talking to you because I didn't die, as my Volvo station wagon in Mount Vernon was at a stop sign, pushed through a stop sign, absolutely positively totaled. Bless God, nobody in the crosswalk, nobody in the intersection. And the guy took off. They found who the title papers were, and they knew nothing. And you know what? It's absolutely insane. Photo ops, according to the left, do work for pulling at people's heartstrings. You know, when I was listening to that baby cry as a nurse over the years, I've had to give, when I worked for a pediatrician, shots to kids. Kids, yes, they do cry and they're sad about a lot of things, but really, try Nancy Pelosi. She is the biggest hypocrite. Every time you play her voice, I want to myself scream, but there is a better movie called Silent Scream, and it is about babies in utero trying to get away from an abortionist. Talk about separating a child from what should be the safest place in the world. The movie is called Silent Scream. So, you know, that said, doesn't surprise me whether it be Newtown, Connecticut, where I work. They always use the photo ops of the children to destroy the national identity. The sovereignty of this nation is really what this is all about, because we really do know when we go past elections who would be voting for what. So there you go, taxpayers. And I'm also, I get so rewarded when I hear the real men call into this station, except for one, and I won't even go to him because he's just not worth trying to, except to pray for him. But the one who stand on the side, and when women, I mean that Miss Chavez or whatever her name is, I think it's despicable. She's not having a rational, cogent conversation. She's just screaming at this man. So that said, we do know that the progressive socialist left will do everything they can to change the norms and the standards, as I said to the Idaho Press Tribune reporter sitting next to me at the council meeting last night. I'm appalled about what you think is normative and destroying, even on Father's Day, having some good dads out there who I know, you know, writing stories about them in your paper and purporting. I was down talking about Flag Day and having the mayor hopefully next year do something instead of raising flags that purport nothing but the dismantling of this nation morally. So doesn't surprise me at all. Bless God that you are supporting God and Country. I've heard Nick, because they will be reporting a message. And Nancy Pelosi, even my priest Sunday or Saturday evening at church, said, you know what, I do not believe, and I'm going to be really careful about this, sort of, but I have never believed that works are getting me into heaven. So if she thinks that by all this social goody-do-two shoes that you're doing to destroy this nation, social justice, Nancy, is not socialism. And there's nothing in my Bible I can find in the book of Romans that said is by the grace of God, his blood, I'm going to heaven. So if you think any of this do-good thing, and that was a message from the priest, that you are going anywhere. And I am so sick of people even thinking that that is a right doctrine, because it gets you in a really big mess. So that said, continue on, everybody. I would listen to what William is saying. The night is far, far spent in America. We either will save this republic or we will go the way of socialism. So thank you for being out there, Kevin, and I love God and Country, and thank you for supporting God and Country.
Cindy, God bless. Thank you. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio.
If you're encountered, and you will be, you're going to be arrested, you're taken to a Border Patrol station, and you're processed. If, while in Border Patrol custody, if those children, or if you can prove those children are associated with that family, and there's a lot of child smuggling, there's a lot of smugglers that actually use children as a tool to get people into the country, just meaning the child's not necessarily being smuggled. They recycle the kids to different families. There's no family relation. We have to figure all that out. If there's any suspicion that they're not really truly related to those people, then they will be separated for their own safety. If we believe they're part of an actual family group, when we process them in our facilities, they stay together.
There we have it from the Border Patrol. And, you know, for many, many years, we work with the Federation for American Immigration Reform. And for many, many years, we have gone to Washington, D.C. We'll be going again in September. Not a lot of radio stations get to go. They select talk shows that have influence, talk shows of record. We'll be going to Washington, D.C. We'll see our old friends, Congressman Labrador, Senator Risch, Senator Crapo, Congressman Simpson, and everybody else. And we've always have invitations to go broadcast from the border. And broadcasting from the border represents some unique opportunities. That might be something that we might want to consider, considering just all of the propaganda that's going on.
This is not an immigration issue. This is a humanitarian issue. It's about the children. It's also about people seeking asylum.
We have the worst immigration laws in the entire world. Nobody has such sad, such bad, and actually in many cases, such horrible and tough. You see about child separation. You see what's going on there.
It is intended unequivocally not to just continue to punish asylum seekers and those seeking refuge constitutionally in this country by a system that is in fact broken.
The president himself said that he doesn't, he hates these images, he hates this process, and that's why he's asked for it to be fixed.
But the president is saying, it's not my fault, I didn't do it. No, you did do it. You did it to the dreamers, and now you're doing it to the children. You can rescind this action in a moment.
Yeah, just forget about the laws. Coming up next, what you're not hearing from the press, plus your phone calls at 580-5436. Traffic and weather together. Kevin Miller in the morning on. So here we have it from our friends at Breitbart at 580 KIDO. Let's take a look at just a few things here. 13 factors that you're not hearing from the mainstream press. Number one, Trump is only enforcing the law. The media's manufactured narrative about the necessary and moral separation of illegal alien parents from their children is designed with specific purpose of spreading the fake news that only as a means to be cruel, President Trump is somehow making all this up as he goes along. Now, the president, unlike President Obama, is enforcing the law. How many years, and if you're just joining us, thanks for giving us a try. How many years during the 8 years of that Obama did we look at him and say, why won't you do your constitutional duty, which is to enforce the law? If you notice Nancy Pelosi and others saying, well, the president can just do this. No. Chief Bones does not have the ability, the Boise police chief, we love the chief, to sit back and say, well, I'm only going to enforce these laws or that law. The president is compelled to enforce all the laws. And we continue on. I love this. It's the president's only choice is to separate illegal families. The law is the law. When you cross the border illegally, you are a lawbreaker, including American citizens. You have to be put into the criminal justice system. And here's what William Gein said, and you're not going to hear this anywhere else. If an American citizen breaks the law, they go into the criminal justice system. If you break the law, and whether you're Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Kevin Miller, or Laura Ingraham, you're separated from your family and children. Regardless, American citizens are not allowed to keep your family in the popo, in the jail, in the detention center. Why does the media want the illegals to enjoy special rights and privileges that we as American citizens do not enjoy? By the way, think about this. We're paying for the detention centers. Is it a fun camp? No, not at all. And we are, as Americans, are blessed to have a big heart. The problem is we don't have a big enough wallet to pay for it. We'll talk about it next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug. And coming up, are you ready for it? This Saturday, the Boise Music Festival, Expo Idaho. Details and great ticket deals available at KIDOTalkRadio.com. KIDO Talk Radio, your proud home for Fox News Radio in the Treasure Valley. Let's go to Florida. Joining us now to talk about space, our great friend Eben Brown. Eben, good morning.
Good morning.
So the president wants to start a space force. What's this about, a space council, or the future of space?
Well, the National Space Council actually goes back to the time of President Kennedy. It's something that President Trump has revived. It's a way for key policymakers to come together and discuss the future of American space potentials and progress and prowess and things like that. And a year ago, President Trump mentioned the idea of forming a military branch that would operate in space. And yesterday, after the National Space Council's meeting, the president said that he directed the Pentagon to start thinking about how to separate potentially part of the Air Force into a Space Force, becoming its own separate branch of the military, a sixth branch of the military. Exactly how this would play out, we don't know. What this Space Force would do, we don't know. Currently, the Air Force does have a space command, which it takes up a good hunk of the Air Force, but it operates mostly clandestinely and with classified missions that even though they're not very secret, we don't know really what the parameters and the details of those missions are. Would it make good sense to separate that into its own branch of service? That seems to be a mixed. There are mixed opinions about that. Florida Senator Bill Nelson, who is very much a big proponent of the space program, he himself, as a member of Congress, has traveled to space on a space shuttle, has said that he has spoken to generals, and they say it's a bad idea. They don't want it. But it seems to be something the president wants. Exactly what it would do on the grand scale has not yet been discussed.
Indeed, of course, we could go back to some of these old shows, whether it's Star Trek or Space 1999 or Star Blazers, where we have this space force, and who would we fight? But I guess there are some really military considerations when we're looking at other national powers like the Chinese and the Russians and others.
Well, yeah, there are some concerns that other nations would try to militarize space, and we obviously would not want to have a defensive disadvantage in that regard. But there is something else that I think would be a beneficial ancillary benefit, if that's the way I can put it. If this is going to be a true branch of the military where people can enlist, one would assume, well, first of all, I will tell you that not everyone who enlists will go to space, but people who do enlist would end up becoming rather highly technically trained. And after their military commitment would be over, would be entering the private sector workforce with some very high-tech training and great resumes. And this could be a good way to bolster our high-tech workforce in this country. In the meantime, it would create a high-tech workforce within the military, which would have that good military efficiency and readiness. And that certainly, I think everyone would say isn't a bad thing to have. The question is would this be a full branch of service where you could enlist and could have that kind of life? And if so, one assumes that those enlistees would, after their service is complete, would have veterans benefits and all the like, could go to school on the government bill. And that would be, again, another added benefit for people who would choose that kind of lifestyle. And remember, the military is more than just a job. It's a way of life. It's a culture. It's a tradition. And so all those other things would come into play eventually. I mean, would you have a Space Force Academy? And does it play Army during college football season? I mean, it's a chuckle, but I mean, it's a real thing. And would there be a guard where, people would be doing this part-time, the way we have a National Guard and an Air Guard and the like?
And I don't know if you ever saw this Japanese animation called Star Blazers. That's what goes on in my mind. But Eben Brown, some great points. A final thought on this, though. A Space Force, why don't we just bring back NASA? Why don't we just...
Well, NASA hasn't gone anywhere, but The question is NASA, what is NASA prepared to do? NASA is an exploration body, and that's what the president has wanted NASA to really return to find its way to becoming, to once again exploring, going back to the moon, going to Mars. A space military might operate alongside NASA, but NASA is predominantly a civilian operation. Its employees are generally civil servants on the GS pay scale. Perhaps maybe a Space Force would be able to attach enlisted personnel to assist NASA at various times, even though NASA does have military people working with it, including many of the astronauts come from the military. But going back to President Eisenhower, we have always wanted our space exploration to be peaceful, and that's why it's been a civilian administration and not part of the military.
Eben Brown, always appreciate your excellent reporting. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
Okay, just indulge me for a minute. If anybody has ever seen this, this is a brief intro to, I guess you would say, a Space Force-like Japanese animation that was fairly popular, I guess, in the 80s and 90s. Do you remember this? Star Blazers? Did anybody remember Star Blazers?
Space, we're leaving Mother Earth to save the human race, our Star Blazers.
So you get the point here. And by the way, a nonpartisan issue at 580-5436, 580-KIDU, you have the President of the United States realizing that, yes, we do need a Space Force. Now, primarily, we've looked at space through the eyes of NASA. We've primarily looked at space through exploration and scientists and astronauts and people that have, gone where no man has gone before and that type of thing. But could we see one day where we have people fighting in space, kind of like Star Wars, I guess? They use lasers now. They use lasers and mirrors and everything else. Is that too hard to believe that we could have some type of space battle and the need for a Space Force? The President of the United States believes that is the case. And in this era
to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement.
Wow. As Eben Brown said, if you've ever been in the military, around the military, it is a very unique culture. But don't we, as I said, don't we have NASA for this? This is huge.
To immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement.
It is a big statement, but do we have the money, the will to make it happen?
Searching for a distant star, heading off to Iskandar, leaving all we love behind. Who knows what dangers we'll find? We must be strong and brave. Our home we've got to save. If we don't, in just 1 year, Mother Earth will disappear.
So there you have it, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. A little non-political talk, the President of the United States wanting to establish a Space Force. And most of us grew up in the era, most of us that are baby boomers or, to a degree, Generation Xers, Gen Xers, not so much the millennials. The millennials grew up in the age of Obama, no fault of their own, where NASA was vilified, where we shut everything down. And if you go back to some of those movies, and like Saving Private Ryan and others, those are the only ways that we're ever going to experience these things. But can you imagine going into space and the computers they used, weren't as powerful as our phones today, weren't even nearly as powerful. They used slide rulers and such, right? I mean, truly the frontier. I've always been critical of the space industry myself, but the older I get, the more I think to myself, wow, incredible. By the way, I don't know where this is. Maybe you can find it on eBay. Maybe you can find it on Amazon. It's called Earth to the Moon. It was created it was an HBO series featuring Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks was the producer of it. So it's Touchstone or Movie Tone or whatever, Playtone, that's it. It was his company. And I've never seen anything that highlights the frustration, the sacrifice of not only the engineers and the astronauts, but their families and what it was like to live in that bubble. Perhaps Tom Wolfe's The Right Stuff, but that was a book and a movie. This was a series on HBO, and I'm surprised that HBO, they continue to bring things back like the Gary Shandling Show and others. Why they would never bring that back, because it is so, so powerful what those folks went through. So while we're waking up, while you're starting the day, 580-5436, look, we've got other things to talk about. Hillary Clinton's going after Christianity with this migrant issue. We've given you the other side of the story. We can talk about road safety, which is one of my favorite topics. Unfortunately, I wish that it wasn't. Or the Space Force. Bringing that to light. My concern, and maybe this is your concern, is funding our military right now with the branch of services that we have. Bringing back that. And by the way, said the sixth branch, the Coast Guard is under the Treasury Department. So that's a unique relationship. The Space Force. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
G-Force. 5 incredible young people with superpowers. And watching over them from Center Neptune, 7 Zark 7. Watching, warning against surprise attack by alien galaxies from beyond space.
Let's see, we were ahead of our time here. More of the Japanese animation that made its way to American popular culture. If you're just waking up, President Trump has been talking about this for a while at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The need for a Space Force. When we take a look at the military today, we are still trying to recover from being overextended. We're still trying to recover from all these wars, destroying ISIS and everything else. And the president recently said it's time to create another branch of the military. Now, if this had been President Obama, if this had been John F. Kennedy, it would have been hailed. People are going, well, Donald Trump, how are you going to do that? That's a very good point. The president doesn't get a pass on how are you going to do it based on the fact that we have a deficit, a debt, and we need to fund the current military on Earth, right?
Immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement.
So if you're just tuning in, those of us that were latchkey kids, or whatever you want to call us, some of our impressions were watching these cartoons from Japan, where you had, Star Blazers, Battle of the Planets, these kind of things, where this happened all the time. For those of you that are a little older, Star Trek, Star Wars. But the President of the United States not kidding around when he says he wants to establish a Space Force. Evan Brown, who started this segment out at KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, saying, Kevin Miller, what type of culture will it have? The military is very regimented. Science and the military, does it go hand in hand? Maybe if you're the NSA, maybe if you're a spy. And are you going to have like Space Force bases and such? People can trivialize it all you want, but you do have the Chinese and the Russians looking to build permanent bases, military bases for military activities on the moon and other places. Liberty Linda joins us now. Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberty Linda.
Good morning, Kevin. I'm so happy we have President Trump as our president. He says it like it is. Wow. And I would love you to go to the border, Kevin. You'd get it all straightened out. We'd know what's going on down there. It would be so exciting to hear you there.
there are ways to go. Many years ago, I had a friend of mine. We sent him to the border, and it's not exactly the safest joint around. We don't hear that from the media. All we hear are people about the families being broken up and such. But if you don't want your family to be broken up, don't break the law.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you a question. How does Nancy Pelosi still get reelected year after year after year? You know, there's still a lot of many wonderful people in California. What's going on over there? It just blows my mind. Anyway, I'm not a person who believes in a big space program. However, I would like to know what some in our government are doing behind those chemtrails. You know, they just spray those chemtrails all over. Have you ever looked up in the middle of the night and you see these little white dots up there? You think there's stars.
Usually when I'm going up in the middle of the night, it's going to go to the facilities. That's a little too much information. However, Liberty Linda, let me put you on the spot right now. The big question, what do you say to people that when you say the chemtrails, they shake their head and go, there are no chemtrails?
They don't look up. You have to look up and see what's going on in our world. I mean, they're up there chemtrailing almost every single day. And,
now, what do the chemtrails do? What do they do to us?
Well, that's the question. What are they doing up there?
Maybe it's just a bunch of smoke.
Those little stars, we think are stars, and they're moving around up there. Those aren't stars. So, everybody look up.
You know what they could be. They could be the aliens.
Well, we have aliens that are living here on Earth, and they're called human beings sometimes. But anyway, we have to start looking around and knowing what's going on around us. So a space program, I can go for that if it's a space program that's going to protect we, the people.
If they stop the chemtrails.
I want us to be protected.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, great show as always, Kevin. Love your guests, William Dean, all of them. Wonderful show. Thank you for keeping us awake. And everybody, look up.
Well, I'm glad I'm keeping you awake. But Liberty Linda, thank you for the call. You take care.
Okay, Kevin, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Time for traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk.
We need to be clear. Illegal actions have and must have consequences. No more free passes, no more get-out-of-jail-free cards, no more lawlessness. Today, DHS is referring those who illegally cross our borders to the Department of Justice for prosecution.
And coming up, Fox News will have the very latest. Remember, from the White House to your house, we are your home for Fox News on the radio. And speaking of which, coming up the 26th, we will be at the Treasure Valley God and Country Festival. Can't wait to see you. It's going to be awesome. It's free. Go to Facebook, Treasure Valley God and Country Festival, for the very latest 52 years of God and country right here in the Treasure Valley. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.